Welcome to 3 Steps to Clarity, Confidence, and Control over your money. So a big thing that I hear from all of my clients, and this was really important to me, right, is we all just want to feel free. And figuring out the financial aspect of that becomes so important because if you have your money in place, if it's doing the things that you want it to do, then number one, that's one thing you don't have to worry about anymore, right? There's so much stress that goes along with worrying that we're doing the right thing with our finances. But on top of that, it gives you this sense of freedom that you might be able to do something else with your life than what you're doing currently. It helps you dream bigger. It helps you plan for things in the future that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And as a lawyer, I know that I certainly felt the pull of the golden handcuffs, which many of us are probably familiar with. And I felt like I was pretty much trapped in my situation for a long time. But getting to the point where I was able to figure out my finances to a point where I really was able to achieve a level of financial freedom that I never knew that I could have, that's when everything else in my life started to fall into place in terms of knowing what I wanted to really do with my time and my energy and my passion, being able to spend time with my family, with my children, and luck would have it, also finding a husband in all of that mix. So financial freedom has been very good to me, and I think it's really great for everyone. And so I totally suggest it, and we're going to work toward that today. So many of you are probably lawyers. That's generally my audience. And figuring out your finances when you are already a busy lawyer can just be pretty frustrating, right? I mean, we might not know where our money ends up every month. Part of the reason for that is just because it's one more thing we would have to keep track of, right? We're already tracking our time. Are you telling me I now also have to keep track of every single time I pull out my credit card or I buy a coffee? It's a little too much, right? We just don't have the energy for that level of management and that level of upkeep when we're doing that in every other area of our life. And so money becomes, the last thing that we want to think about and the last thing that we pay attention to. I also find that and certainly in my situation and with many of my clients, the typical personal finance rules just don't really apply. If you follow the same career trajectory that I did in terms of going through law school, taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for that degree, but then going into a job that also paid, well above the typical American salary, I came out of law school and kind of peaked, right? This was a lot of money that I was earning, more than I've ever earned in my entire life, certainly more than my parents ever earned. And I didn't really know what to do with that. And I didn't appreciate that if I didn't want to remain at that level for the rest of my life, I might need to treat money differently than some of my counterparts who had started earlier than me because they didn't go to grad school or were in jobs that would consistently increase in pay over the lifetime of their career. And finally, many of my clients really are just looking for some proven strategies, right, that will work for their numbers and for their situation. As an accredited financial counselor, I don't have any formulas that I can give you that work for everyone. I don't believe that there are formulas that work for everyone. I believe that to really optimize your money and your finances for the life that you want to have, we have to do a deep dive into what that life looks like and what your money looks like so we can marry those two things together. And it's not going to look the same for every person. And that's why so much of this needs to be personalized work. But that's why I enjoy it. At the end of the day, right, if you could just figure out the money part, like I said, there are so many other things in your life that may feel like they just magically fall into place after that. Part of it is just becoming more intentional, but part of it is because money is a really big part of our lives. And if we can take that stress away, we have so much more energy for everything else that we want to be doing. And we have the security that we're going to be okay. So for anyone who doesn't know me, hello, I'm Jessica Medina. I am a former lawyer and turned accredited financial counselor, which just means that I help people with money. I don't just deal with people and I don't just deal with money. There are a lot of financial professionals out there who just want to talk to you about numbers and just want to make sure that your investment account is as big as it possibly can be, probably because they're managing it for you. That's not what I do. In fact, I do not give investment advice. I also don't give tax or legal advice. I've moved on from that part of my life. And now I just help people with those daily money habits that will really build all of the foundation that they need to be wealthy, whatever that looks like for them. So, a little bit about my own story. Many of you I know personally, and welcome. I'm so glad to see some familiar faces out there. But I graduated from Columbia Law School in 2004, and I had twins my 2L year. It was a really interesting experience to go through finals. I took two finals right before I gave birth and one final after, and you can imagine which one I bombed. But got back on the horse for my 3L year, finished strong, and I headed straight into big law. I was carrying over $200,000 of student loan debt. Which is a little bit more than the average today. Today, the average law school student graduates with $145,000 of student loan debt, but that's the average, right? I have clients who have over $300,000 of student loan debt. And when you're carrying something like that, right? I basically had a mortgage with no house. I had a law degree, but I wasn't guaranteed a job. I wasn't guaranteed earning potential. And there was just a lot of stress that went along with being not only the sole breadwinner in the house. My baby twins were not going to be pulling in any money, that's for sure. But on top of that, having this huge debt load that I was carrying around, unsure of when I would ever be able to manage it. So I did go straight into big law. I thankfully got a wonderful job at an amazing firm here in the DC metro area. This is where I live. And they were as family friendly as big law can get. But I really was coming in with two babies and as a single mom. So I needed to maneuver that whole associate life and, raise my family and get work done and try to be a stellar associate. And I remember thinking to myself, I make a lot of money. I make more than anyone else in my family. And yet it doesn't feel like it goes very far. I remember thinking to myself, why do I have to drive an older car? Why do I have to have a small apartment? Why can I barely afford my nanny, who really was integral to my entire junior associate life? Um, and I feel like I just don't have very much to show for it at the end of the month. And part of that is because it was true. My life was pretty expensive when I was by myself and I was raising kids and I was living in a metropolitan area and I was saddled with a huge amount of student loan debt. There wasn't really much around it. And I think that there is this misconception that all lawyers make gobs and gobs of money, which is not true. I was making gobs and gobs of money, but that doesn't mean that I was able to easily and handily cover all of the lifestyle expenses that went along with being a big law associate. And so I spent many years there, many more than I ever intended. I had meant to go into the government. I had dreams of being the white hat prosecutor and changing the criminal system from the inside out. And that wasn't really my path. I spent 8 years at my firm, partly because of the 2008 recession, but also because I just couldn't even fathom how I could afford to do anything else. I was already making a lot of money and I felt stretched thin. There had to be a problem because I didn't want to be partner, but I didn't know what else I could possibly do to live the life that I was living and still be able to afford it. I did eventually transition out to the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I can tell you the change to government was amazing. It was night and day, really, for me. But on top of that, I realized I didn't want to practice law anymore, which was really hard. And I can do a whole webinar on my career trajectory and those decisions. But when I was at the SEC, the realization that I did not want to practice law anymore, and I was not going to be earning this much money for the rest of my life, made me get really serious about what I was doing with my finances. And I found the financial independence movement. A lot of you may know it by the name FIRE, stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I wasn't necessarily interested in stopping working when I was 40 years old, but I was interested in stopping being a lawyer and not having the pressure of having to have that kind of earning capacity for the entirety of my career. I wanted to be able to do something that fed my soul a little bit more and maybe just didn't earn as much money. but I didn't want to be destitute. I didn't want my children to not be able to go to college. I didn't want us to, have to live in a hovel. I had very irrational thoughts about all kinds of things that would happen to me if I stopped being a lawyer. But when I sat down and I did the numbers, I realized I could definitely do this. There are ways that I could strategize the time that I was spending in the government in terms of paying down my student loans, in terms of letting go of financial obligations and not replacing them, and just in terms of having my children get old enough that I wasn't going to be primarily financially responsible for them anymore. And the combination of those factors and seeing them for what they were really motivated me to create a plan so that I could leave the law. I created a 10-year plan because I'm a planner. And I met my husband in the middle of that, and he cut it down in half. So it was then a 5-year plan. And I got out. And I was no longer at the SEC. I left in 2018 to become an accredited financial counselor. That's my dream. I found this love of personal finance while I was at the SEC. I was on my own personal finance journey, and I realized I could use these same skills to help other people who are struggling with money. I was not somebody who was wonderful with money their entire life. I know what it feels like to feel like you have no idea what happens to things by the end of the month, to feel like you just can't really get ahead. You're just treading water. And it's okay. You're not destitute, but you're also not making a lot of progress and you don't have anything that you're working toward. I understood that. And it took me many years to finally figure out what I needed to do. But once I did, I got out. I get to live my dream. And I'm so excited to be here now because my whole job is helping lawyers figure out their finances so they can pursue their dreams. Lawyers are the smartest people on the planet. And I know that's biased because I am one. But I really do believe they're some of the smartest people in the world, and their talents are being wasted because they feel like they don't have choices. So I am here to make sure that they feel like they have choices again. And if there's something that you're really passionate about that you want to spend time doing, I'm going to give you some tools so that you can actually make that happen in your own life. So what you're going to get today, as I promised, this is 3 steps to clarity, confidence, and control over your money. So you're going to get a taste of all of those. I'm going to give you a sample of what I do with my own one-on-one clients. And I'm going to give you a preview of a new program that I'm starting that is going to be a group program for folks who want to try to do this together. And if you stay tuned all the way to the end, there is going to be a special bonus. So make sure you wait for it. And if you're watching the recording, you can fast forward to the end and see what that is. But come back and learn the steps too. So clarity, right? This is always where we want to start. And one of the secrets of, financial management is that your money doesn't really start with numbers. I never have my first meeting with my clients talking about their actual finances. Of course, I ask for lots and lots of numbers and lots of information from them before we get started. But when we first sit down, we have a long conversation about their own experiences with money, experiences that they had when they were younger, things that they saw in their house in terms of how their parents manage money or how their parents didn't manage money very well. We talk about early experiences they may have had when they first went away to school and were responsible for their own money. I can tell you, I was so excited when I went to college. I had been working since I was in high school. And I worked retail because I didn't want to go to food. I have obviously very thick curly hair, and the idea of smelling like food all the time just kind of turned my stomach. And so I went into retail, and I remember going away to college in San Diego, getting a job at Express, and racking up a $4,500 credit card bill. I had no idea how I was going to pay that back. I certainly wasn't making enough at Express to pay it back because I was only working part-time. I was still in school, but nobody ever explained to me what the process was in terms of, so if I buy, basically 3/4 of the new fall line, I don't have to pay for it right away. I can pay for it over time. But over time, I wasn't paying enough to actually make a dent in that bill. And season after season, I would just tack on a little bit more to the principal and the interest would keep racking up. And it was a really eye-opening and frightening experience for me to be graduating from college with nearly $5,000 of credit card debt on my way to grad school, right? I'm not going to work while I was in law school. That was not my plan. So I wouldn't really be bringing in any money. And it seemed odd to take out a student loan to try to pay down my credit card. Not even sure if I could do that. Um, I will say, when I was very young, my parents got a divorce when I was a teenager, and when I was very young, I didn't really see how money was handled. I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that we lived okay. I didn't have all the stuff that my other friends had. I didn't do all the activities that other kids did, but I didn't feel like I was really like anything was wanting. But I also didn't understand any of the rules. I didn't understand how to behave. And so when I got to college, wow, look at that. I didn't handle money very well. I didn't really understand what I was supposed to be doing. And my mother and my stepdad bailed me out at the end of college. And I was so grateful to them for paying off my credit card. And it was such a huge privilege that they were even able to do that for me. But it kind of turned me off to credit cards for most of my adult life. I was so afraid to use them. And so I flipped all the way to the other extreme in that I never took advantage of any credit card point plans. I never got any of those nice bonuses. And so I kind of went from 0 to 100 immediately and said, nope, either I can't handle credit. I'm not good with credit cards. I'm never going to use them. And yeah, I didn't rack up any credit card debt when I was in law school, but I also missed out on a lot of opportunities. And that's just an example of kind of how some of the early experiences that we have with money, especially things that we see in our own family, can really have an effect on things that we do today. So, this is what I talk to my clients about before we even get started. We want to figure out how we got to where we are and the things that we believe in our core so that we can make sure that those things are serving us. Because if they're not, we're going to have to figure out how to let them go. And I can't tell you how many clients I have met with where they grew up and there was a job loss in the family when they were young. And they remember going from a well lived life with lots of luxury to absolutely nothing. And that change in circumstance really rocked them to the core. And that can have a variety of eventual effects, but oftentimes you see one of two things happen. Either they become super savers and they will never spend a dime and not enjoy the life that they're living, or they will also take the stance that you only live once and can go away, so you better spend it while you have it, right? Those kinds of patterns will keep repeating themselves. So you want to look back at your own history, at your history of your family, and think about what are those money memories that you may still be carrying around, because we'll want to process them so that we can treat money differently moving forward. So, time for a little reflection, right? I want you guys to ask yourself, and you don't need to put this in the chat. This is really supposed to be a personal exercise for you, unless you are interested. But ask yourself, how did we handle money as a child in our home? What do I remember about the way money was managed? And maybe part of it is that you don't remember anything because no one ever talked to you about money. In my home, it was rude to talk about money. So I never knew how much my parents made. I never knew what anything cost. I just knew that there was food on the table at night, and I guess we were doing okay. And so from that lack of knowledge, I learned never to ask questions. I learned that, well, I guess I'm just supposed to figure it out, and I shouldn't ask for help. And that really affected me when I got older and I was sitting in my law firm office, sitting across the desk from actual financial professionals, right? Trying to get me to invest or get me to buy insurance or whatever it was. And I never asked any questions because I didn't want to seem stupid. And I thought, oh, I'm already supposed to know this, even though no one has ever taught me anything about it, right? So figuring out how you handled money what you saw about the way money was handled as a child can be really important for figuring out how you got to where you are now. Yes, absolutely. In our culture, children were kept in the dark when it came to money. Nancy, I think that is so common. I came from a family of immigrants, and we did not talk about money. In fact, we have a bunch of superstitions around money that I still have to process. I was taught that money on the bed leads to sickness, and I will tell you, I'm still a little superstitious about it. So you'll never find me with a purse or a wallet on the bed. Um, but it's those kinds of things that really get ingrained into you. Yeah, exactly, right? Money being a very anxious topic, people not wanting to mention anything about it, or God forbid, when something horrible financially happens, right? There's a bankruptcy or there's a job loss or somebody, gets evicted, which my clients have experienced. And no one ever explains what's going on. No one ever talks about how they got there, how they're going to fix it, right? You were just all sitting in the dark thinking, wow, money can either be really great or really scary. And I have no idea what the formula is to make sure it's not scary for me. So everything becomes scary, right? That's what we're trying to break the mold from. And so, thinking through how money was handled as a child and what your own early experiences were like can be really helpful. And then I always ask my clients when we're getting started, think about what is the financial decision that you've already made in your life that you are really, really proud of. And there's always something, right? Maybe it was getting your law degree. And that was actually a financial decision because it has created a career for you that you otherwise wouldn't be able to have. Or maybe it was, paying down your student loans early. I do have some clients that did that. they're not all like me. Or maybe it was, buying a used car instead of buying a new car. I have experience with both, and I can tell you the used car felt much better. But then also think about, what are the financial decisions that I am least proud of, right? Do you still carry that stuff around with you? Do you still carry with you the shame and the embarrassment from a financial decision that you think maybe wasn't the best? We look at that, we examine it, we talk about it, and then we think about, well, are you still in that same place? Have you learned, right? Have you grown from that experience? And if you have, maybe you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. Maybe you don't have to be afraid that it will repeat itself. And that's a really helpful exercise for anybody who may feel like they're kind of stuck in the same patterns, because we want to make sure we're processing that information and not just trying to attack everything with strategies before getting at the root. So that's how we figure out where we've been, right? That's where I always start with all of my clients. And now we want to figure out, where do you actually want to go? Because it's an important question and it can't be answered by what your current financial picture looks like. We're going to have to go a little bit deeper. So you guys may have seen, me say this before. You can spend your money on anything, but you can't spend it on everything, right? We have to make choices about where our priorities are going to be, where we want to put our resources, whether that's time or energy or money or anything else. We don't have unlimited resources. Now, granted, if you have unlimited money resources, there's no reason for you to be at this training, because you can do whatever you want for however long you want, and everything is absolutely amazing. But if you're here, I imagine that you do feel that there is some limitation to your resources and you want to be expending them in the most efficient way possible. You want to optimize them for the life that you want, right? So that means we're going to have to make some choices. And we always want to make those choices from a foundation of our own core values, right? We want to figure out, what do we value the most, because that needs to guide everything that we do from this point forward. I don't want to have a conversation with someone about their money without knowing what makes them wake up in the morning, without having an understanding of where their non negotiables are, without having an understanding of, if we put more money into this, it would really increase the overall happiness factor of their entire life. That's the stuff that we're looking at. We're not looking at, well, are you saving 15% or 20% toward retirement? It probably depends on what you want your retirement to look like, right? That's going to help you answer that question. Like I said earlier, there is no formula for the perfect financial equation. It's all very personal. So we got to start here. So I always ask people, take a look at some of the values that I have listed. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but you want to pick your top three, right? You want to try to narrow it down to your top three. And I'll tell you, when I did this exercise, and I did it with my husband, fairly recently, after I had left the law and had transitioned over to becoming a financial counselor, my top three values were children, career, and freedom, right? I knew that freedom was a top value of mine for many, many years. It's how I got to where I am right now. My children are turning 18 this year, so they are still top of mind, but that might be switched out for something else in the next year or so. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. And then career, right? Even though I didn't enjoy the law toward the end, I loved being a lawyer. I loved helping people. I loved being intellectually stimulated. I loved, enjoying my work. And that's why it was so hard when I realized I had fallen out of love with the law, because my career was such a top value for me. To be in one that wasn't serving me and wasn't bringing me joy and happiness and fulfillment really went against one of my core values. And now my life is pretty much arranged so that all of my values are getting ticked off constantly. That's where my energy goes. That's where all of my time goes. And it's where a lot of my money goes. I'm not going to lie. I spend money on business coaching because I am trying to create a business that helps me help other people with money and also lets me live a life that I want to live. So any money that I spend that enriches my career feels really good. Money that I spend on my kids feels really good. Money that I spent and saved earlier in my life to create a circumstance of financial freedom feels really good. And it wasn't as hard to do once I knew why I was doing it. So, again, right, when you're thinking about your values, money that's spent on your values is never going to feel wasted, right? And so we want to think about, okay, so once we identify what our values are, how much are we spending on our top values? Is that a really big line item in our budget? Do we need to move things around a little bit to try to free up some resources so that we can better fund our values? I can tell you sometimes things are difficult, right? If you have a mortgage and daycare and student loan payments, you may be in a time of life where your values are dictated by your circumstances, right? But the idea will be to consistently try to move you from a place where you feel like your values are not being funded and change those circumstances over time so that you get closer and closer to 100% full funding of your values. That's where we want to get you. We want to start thinking about what kinds of changes we could make, whether they're day-to-day changes or whether, they're more longer term changes. What kinds of changes can you make to get your spending more aligned to what you've already identified those values to be? Because again, any money that you put toward your actual values, if these things are really important to you, is never going to feel wasted. I'm going to give you guys a link to an exercise that I put together for my own clients to kind of walk them through this. I'll put the link in at the end of the training so you guys have it. It's available for free on my website, but it does walk you through this process and gives you some time and some space to try to think through that. And to think through, right, one of the important steps is making the changes, starting to see where is money maybe bleeding out towards something that isn't that important to you, that you can reallocate to something that is really important to you. Right, so let's talk about control. This is a big one for my clients because, as I said, many of them feel like they're kind of out of sorts with their money. And there's definitely money coming in. Earning might not be the biggest issue, but there's definitely money going out. And we're trying to figure out, how is this happening? Under the old system, this is basically how most people manage their money these days, right? You maybe have one checking account, you have a couple of credit cards, maybe you have a debit card. And so the money is flowing all over the place. And it's really, really hard to see what happens over the course of any amount of time. And you can sign up for those, really, really wonderful apps, right? You can sign up for Mint, or you need a budget, or, personal capital, but you got to go in there and you got to track it and you got to recategorize everything because they never get it right the first couple of times. And, and so that's, as long as you're willing to do that kind of upkeep, then it doesn't matter where your money's flying all over the place, right? Because some other system is going to keep track of it for you, but then you need to keep track of that system. And like I said, you're already tracking every minute of every day. Do you really want to go into a spreadsheet or go into Mint and recategorize all the things that it did wrong every single time? I can't tell you how many times I signed into Mint and it would not sync up with my bank. And it was so frustrating. And I constantly had to have all of my passwords available and my phone and my computers. They could send me the security link. And it was just such a hassle. It just became too much. It became too much of a burden to even think about it. So I created a new system. And under the new system, everything is going to be very, very clear, right? We want clarity not only over our values and where we came from, we also want clarity over where the heck our money is going and what we're spending it on, and how is it being allocated to these different things. And so under the new system, we take advantage of the very habits that we already have as people who exist in a financial world, and we take advantage of those to make sure that you're not adding additional work to you. And the way that we do that is we separate our money. One of the reasons why the old system is so ineffective is because there's money going everywhere, and you have to then categorize it. You have to apply all of that structure to things that have already happened. But if we proactively create a system that categorizes itself, you don't have to track it anymore, because you go into your account, you see the balance, and you know exactly how much has been spent on these different categories of expenses. So when I say you want to separate your money, you basically want to give each account that you have one job. You want to have your fixed expenses, right? Like all of your regular bills that come in every single month, you want them to be working out of one single account. If you have discretionary spending, like anything that you buy miscellaneous from Amazon, or eating out, or groceries, gas, things that happen pretty regularly, but the amounts are all over the place and it's really hard to tell how much you're spending, you use one account. And then you can always tell how much you're spending in that category because it's reflected right in the balance. You know exactly what's going on and can keep much better track of it without having to go in and do double duty on something. I had a client who decided that she wanted to use one of her credit cards just for things that go in her mouth. So eating out and groceries, because food was a top value for her. But she was also concerned that because it was so important to her, she may be overspending in that category. So she actually created an account, right? It was one credit card that she would only use at the grocery store and for eating out. So she could see how much she was spending on a month in and month out basis just on that type of expense. Now that's even more detailed than I normally suggest in terms of when I'm working with my clients and I'm helping them set up their cash management system. But that's the idea, right? We want to be able to easily see what's happening without having to go in the back end and correct a bunch of line items. The next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're planning for what we can, right? You can't plan for everything, but you can probably plan for like 80% of stuff. And if you look back over, a year of statements, you'll see all those weird random bills that came up over time that only come up once, maybe your bar dues, your car insurance every 6 months. I have some utilities that are only paid quarterly. And so instead of being surprised by the quarterly water bill, I save up for it in between. I know it's coming, right? It's not really unexpected, certainly not an emergency, but I need to start allocating some of my now money for my future bills because I know they're coming and I just have to figure out how much I'm going to need for them. And then I always want my clients to be checking their progress on an actual schedule. I have some who like to do a weekly money date. But at the end of the day, you want to at least be going in there once a month and see, are you on track for what you set up for yourself? Which will be very easy because each of your different accounts only has one job. So you will immediately see how you did, right? Whether you need to make any adjustments, whether there are bills coming up that you haven't planned for, that you need to set aside some money for. That's what the check-in process is for. It's also there to make sure that you haven't changed goals, that you're still working toward the same things, and that you are enjoying the process and that everything is working smoothly. One of the last tips that I give to my clients is when you're setting up these different accounts and giving them the one job, we want to create something called cushions. We never want to be overdrawn on an account, right? We never want to be managing things so close to the line that you get down to zero at the end of the month. That is not the goal. The goal is to always have some buffer there to make sure that you can easily automate things, put things on auto pay, and feel confident that the money will always be there. So I always have my clients create cushions for themselves, and that, number one, gives them extra money in case something comes up, but also ensures that they can put themselves on a regular schedule of making payments, of making transfers, of doing all the things they need to do with their money without worrying that they're going to be coming down really close to the line. And then, of course, like any plan, we're always going to be adjusting as needed. That's one of the points of those check-ins, to make sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to, but also that you still have the same goals, right? If I have a lot of clients who actually get to the end of their debt payoff journey and they need to now adjust their plan, instead of working toward paying down debt, working towards saving towards some long-term goal. And adjusting that vision is a really important step to keep you motivated and to keep you working toward the progress that you've already made. So, right, what we want clarity, we want confidence, we want control over our money. We didn't talk about confidence yet, right? That's one thing that we were missing. Confidence really just comes from doing the work. I wish there were a shortcut. I really wish there were. I wish there was some magic pill that I could give people to have confidence over their money. Even the clients who meet with me and they go through a strategy session, we put together a whole plan. That's Jessica's plan, right? We made it together, but you have to implement it. And until you've implemented it and seen how it works and seen that you can implement it well, that's when you'll know that, yes, this works. I'm getting it. I'm doing it. It's all happening, right? Knowing that you've done it right, making all that continual progress, that's where the confidence comes from. Now, the easiest way, I think, right, of course, is to do it along with an expert, because you know you'll be doing it right. You won't have to worry that you've, read something in a book and messed up the formula, and now, your finances are all crazy, which is already a fear of ours, right? We're so risk averse. But also doing it with community support can really build confidence when you see your teammates doing it, and then you do it yourself, and they, hearing the support and the applause from when you're doing something well and supporting your teammates can be so powerful, right? So think about the difference between going it alone, right? Reading a bunch of personal finance books and figuring out what works for your situation, and, ignoring the drive Uber at night as your second income advice and trying to find something else that works for you, or doing it with a bunch of other lawyers, right? Led by another lawyer who understands exactly what you're going through, who understands the nature of the types of financial issues you may be struggling with, and who understands what systems work depending on both your personality and your financial situation. I don't know about you. I'm a community person. I would much rather go with my friends than have to go it alone. So a little bit about what my own clients say about working with me, right? And these are the exact systems that I teach in my new program that I'm developing. So, getting tools to keep better track of where they're spending their money, making sure that that money is now allocated to their actual goals and their values. This is the dream, right? To finally have something that feels simple and feels effortless, but is also purposeful and intentional. That's what we want for our money. Being able to work with someone who can really give you a very, very clear picture of how you're doing now and the road to how to get to where you want to be can be very, very powerful. You're going to need to walk that path, but having the map can be really, really helpful, right? And coming up with a framework and the system, that will help you track those expenses, and it's just much more doable, right? I get a lot of aha moments with my clients when I explain to them specifically the cash management system and starting to separate out their money and giving it different jobs. It just feels like such a relief, because they finally understand what's happening and they feel like they have actual control over what's going on. And in the future, they will know how to deal with changes that come up. Right. My favorite review that I've gotten from one of my clients, when I asked her, so tell me how it felt before we started working together, and now that you finished the Beyond Big Law program, night and day. It was night and day. She was so stressed, and she would spend so much time just wasting worrying about money, and whether she was doing the right things, and whether things were being paid on time, and whether she was saving enough, and whether she would ever be able to leave her job. And now everything works like clockwork. And she goes in there on a monthly basis. She checks everything. All the numbers match up the way that she wants them to. She's moving over any extra money that comes in toward her goals. She is crushing her debt. She is saving for her next dream. And she has a plan to leave her big law job. That's my dream, right? Getting you guys closer to your dreams. So, how do I want to do this with you? Of course, I have my one-on-one work that I do with clients. Love it. Absolutely love it. But I'm trying something new now. So I've developed an 8-week group program. This is for practicing lawyers and anybody who's looking for more clarity and confidence control over your money, right? The idea is to eventually give you the freedom to do whatever it is that you want with your life. And this is all of the stuff that comes in with the 8-week program. We're going to be doing 8 weekly group intensive calls where we all get together. They will be recorded because I know I'm working with lawyers and not everyone is available all of the time. But we're going to be talking about the different methods that I'm going to be teaching you and troubleshooting what's going on in terms of you trying to implement it on your own. There's going to be weekly action assignments. In addition to the prep work you get to even enter into the program, like I said, I do need numbers. We're also going to be working on things every week to keep you moving and making progress and making sure that you're actually implementing the systems that you're going to be taught, but you're going to do it with me. I'm going to hold your hand. You're going to turn in your assignments. I'm going to tell you when I see something that seems a little bit off. I'm going to tell you when I see something that I think you might, be able to treat a little bit differently. I'm going to give you some more creative strategies that don't show up in the personal finance books. And we're going to do it together. And you're not going to have to worry that you've done it wrong and nobody's checking your work. And for those of you who might want a little additional support or might have some, some issues, some financial questions that aren't really falling under the typical program curriculum, that you can add on some private sessions with me. I want to make sure that you guys feel really supported, and I want to make sure that you get answers to all of your questions. And since, with a program, I might not be able to get to every single person's individual questions. If you had something really non-traditional and creative that you wanted to do with your life or with your money, that's something that we could do in a private session. And you'll get access to that at a discounted rate because now you're in my network and you'll be able to get answers to that question while you're still in the program. So this is just a map of kind of what we'll be covering over the 8 weeks. It really is a lot, but the idea is that we're going to do it together and you're going to be able to do it with me. And I know the things that have tripped up my clients before in doing this work. And so we can head those things off before they even become issues. We're going to be exploring money history. We're going to be talking about what our values are, right? So some of the stuff that we talked about today, we're going to be going in depth and doing it in a group setting so that we can all feed off of each other's energy. We're also going to learn the framework that I teach my clients for evaluating their current financial picture. One of the top questions I get asked is, am I doing okay? How is everything? Does it look okay? And I'm going to teach you how to figure that out for yourself so that you can apply those tests and that framework in the future to make sure that you're on track and keeping up progress. I'm also going to teach you all of the financial strategies that you need for your personal situation. It's rare, but not every lawyer has student loan debt that they're still carrying around. So you may not need the student loan repayment strategies training. And I'm not here to teach you things you don't need to know. No one has that much time, right? So it's kind of going to be like a buffet style where you're going to learn the strategies that apply to your personal financial situation. And of course, you're going to be discussing the application of those strategies to your numbers with me in terms of turning in your weekly assignments and getting some feedback on, how those strategies are being implemented. You're going to learn how to do the cash management system, a little bit of what we've talked about today, but I go into much further detail and help you figure out how to do it specifically for your numbers with your accounts. We're going to implement that system together, and we're going to talk about what some of the best practices are in terms of credit card use and debit card use and how many accounts to have and how to schedule transfers and things like that, and make sure that it's actually working for you. And then we always want to wrap up by giving you tools for what to do when the plan goes off the rails, right? Because life happens, it always does. And one of the most frustrating things about trying to use a formula for something is that, well, what do I do when it doesn't work? What do I do when I have an emergency pop up? Or, when my goals change, or I have a job change, or we need to move, or something else happens? What tools can I continue to use throughout my life to make sure that I can continue to make financial progress? I have to be honest with you. my clients really do pay thousands of dollars to get access to these strategies and to be able to work with me and to basically figure out, their entire financial situation to get them on the road to their dreams. But I wanted to make this more accessible for more people. And also, like I said, I love groups. I just love the community aspect. So I thought, let me try it. Let me see how it goes. This is the first time I'm doing a group program. I'm super excited about it. And you guys get the inaugural price because it's the first time for me. It's going to be the first time for you. And I'm super excited to offer it at a much more reasonable price point than my one-on-one work with clients. So for this first program, it's $500 for the whole 8 weeks. And I promised you a special bonus at the end if you sign up for the group program in the next 24 hours. So this will be available until the end of the day on Tuesday, February 16th. You will also get a free 30-minute session with me alone, a private session to talk about whatever you want. You have financial questions, you want to do a deep dive on, an early retirement scenario, or, you want to just explore more into your career trajectory, or, looking at your current finances. That 30-minute session is yours. It's just going to be you and me, and we can talk about whatever you want. The one-on-one, I do have some other questions. And if people have questions about the one-on-one program, I'm happy to talk offline about that program as well. This really is just to kind of explain what's going to be happening in the group program so that you guys can see it. In the one-on-one, we do all of this work in a very, very shortened schedule because I'm doing all the work for you. So you've gotten a lot of tips today, and you've gotten hopefully a good impression of what I'm going to be doing in the Beyond Big Law group program. The spots are limited. As I mentioned, I wanted to keep this to a small group so that folks could really, connect with each other. It's all going to be lawyers in there. And I needed the group to be small since I'm going to be doing work too, right? Checking a lot of homework. But you can sign up at on my website, /group-program. Like I said, the bonus 30-minute session with me expires on Tuesday, February 16th. But you can also set up a phone consult if you have any questions about the program. You can just go onto my website, set up a consult, and mention that you are still interested in the bonus so that you can get credit for it. And then you'll be able to get your money in order by spring. And just so in case there are questions about confidentiality, yes, part of the contract that all of the group participants sign is a promise of confidentiality. Anything that we say in the group calls, obviously you can share as much as you want, but there is going to be a confidentiality disclaimer on your contract. So everybody's going to be signing off on that. And in terms of the information that you share with me, of course, that is absolutely confidential, but you also will not be sharing anything in terms of personal identifying information. So you don't send me anything with your social security number on it. I don't request pay stubs. I don't request account statements. I don't need any of that information. Everything that you're putting together really is your information. And then we work together to just get you to the best set of numbers. So let's talk about some questions that people may have, right? It is called the Beyond Big Law program, but does this work for non-big law attorneys? Yes, it's for lawyers from all walks of life. I have clients ranging from big law to nonprofit attorneys. It is limited to practicing lawyers, just so that we have a lot of the same struggles and money issues, but you do not necessarily have to be in big law to participate in the program. In terms of the time that you may need for the program, look, the initial prep work is no joke. I'm not going to lie. I usually give my clients, I ask them to give themselves at least 7 to 10 days to fill that out. But so we're going to be spending the first 2 weeks of the program going through that material so everybody can get that done. I have some folks who have already joined and have already submitted their prep work. So if you join today, we're starting next Monday, you'll automatically get links to that prep work so you could get started working on it before we even kick off the group program. And then the other exercises throughout the program should take about 1 to 3 hours, depending on how complicated the strategies are. But again, I've done these with a number of clients and I know where folks get stuck, and you will have access to me through the entire 8 weeks in terms of questions that you have about anything that we're doing. And again, like I said, if you need additional help I'm going to be reviewing all those assignments along the way, but you also can get access to private sessions with me, and those will be at a discounted rate if you're interested. I also want to go back a little bit to the confidentiality question. The group calls are voluntary, right? If you don't want to share on the group calls, there is no requirement that you talk about your personal financial situation. If you want to show up and just listen to what other people want to talk about, that's perfectly fine. They're also recorded. So if you don't want to show up at all and you just want to watch the recording later, I think there's magic in participating in a group, in atmosphere and environment. But if you're uncomfortable sharing anything about, money or your money history, there is no requirement that everybody speak up during any of the calls. And there will be plenty of trainings separate from the group calls themselves where you'll be getting the strategies. And I'll be doing videos to explain exactly how to fill out the different spreadsheets so that we get to the answers that we need. But I do want to make sure, I would love for people to be so much, be sharing the struggles. I feel like we do much better when we lift each other up, but it is not an absolute requirement. So again, spots are limited. I'm already half full, and I said I am trying to keep it to a small number. We're getting started next Monday on February 22nd. So you can sign up right on my website at /groups-program. Again, the bonus expires tomorrow, Tuesday night, for that free 30-minute session with me. And if you have any questions, of course, just set up a phone call consult with me right from my website and just put a little note in there that you'd like to get access to the bonus. So you get credit for coming in before the deadline. And definitely getting your money in order before spring. That's going to be the goal. So let me open it up for more questions, and let me grab the link to the actual group program so you guys can